Great to see everybody here today. My name is Helen Marshall and I make up stories for my job, which means I am a children's author. I wonder if any of you like making up stories in your head. I bet you do. Well, when I was about your age, I had a little book that I put all of my stories in, and sometimes I would write it and sometimes I would draw the stories too. I decided to write a story all about friendship, and this is my story. It's called The Mole and the Flower, and I'm going to read it to you very shortly. If you can see very carefully, I have two characters in my story. I have a flower and a mole. And it's a story about them coming together and being the best of friends. The Mole and the Flower, written by me, Helen Marshall, and illustrated by Christopher A. Martin. 50 years ago, in a garden you might know, lived the most beautiful rose of all. Petals of peach and red covered the flower's head, which grew to reach the top of the wall. Long prickly thorns stood out like horns along the flower's green stalk. The birds would pass by and say, "Oh my," stopping for a while to talk. That flower, he sighed with joy and pride as he relaxed in the summer's heat. "What a great occupation," he said with adoration. Their visits were his favourite treats. But the days went on and time had gone, bringing us to the present day. Flower had now grown old, or so we are told, and is feeling more bitter each day, oh no. For he is no longer pretty, youthful nor witty, which made him feel grumpy inside. When the birds passed by, he shooed them to the sky, and off they flew with a cry. His petals had dried, falling limp to each side, making the flower grouchy indeed. His leaves even frowned, which were brown and hung down. "I'm a useless, old, ugly weed." And it says here, "No visitors, please." Oh dear, look, he's looking at himself. He is a very grumpy flower. Just then a loud sound came from the ground. "What on earth is that?" said Flower with doubt. The sound got much bigger, and then with much vigour, out popped a little snout. I wonder if you boys and girls back home can guess what's popping out of the ground just there. The flower bent down. He could see something brown poking out of the ground were two eyes. It was a young mole, a bright, eager little soul, despite her tiny size. "Watch where you're going," said Flower, unknowing. "You nearly uprooted me, you know." Little Mole gave a sniff, her nose a precious gift. "I'm ever so sorry," she said with woe. Before Flower could shout, Mole popped out and looked about. "You see, I'm here on a mission. In this field," she quietly revealed, "is a flower," she said with suspicion. "The most beautiful and grand," and she started to stand, gazing at the creature aloft. "It is a stem that's long, which is green and strong, and petals which are tender and soft." "This flower, I'm told, is bright and bold," said Mole, who was leaning in close, "and thorns like nails as big as sails," and she reached up with her nose. Just then Flower saw what he'd failed to before, and he sighed at being so unkind. He'd seen two eyes, but it came as a surprise to see that the young mole was blind. "This flower, I'm told, should smell like gold," whispered Mole, who snuffled and sniffed. "It says so in my book, if you'd like to take a look. I was given it as a birthday gift." Flower looked in the book, and a big breath he took. It was then that Little Mole knew. for Flower had froze. She could feel it in her toes. The beautiful flower is you. It had been a while since Flower had smiled, but Mole had made him grin. She'd made him feel good, and up he stood, lifting his weary chin. For the rest of the day they had lots to say, talking about this and that. Despite the age gap and that first mishap, all day they talked and sat. The flower, he spoke, telling jokes, making the mole laugh out loud. But it wasn't to last, as a cold wind blew past, and above came a huge storm cloud. Uh-oh. Buckets of snow came to and fro, covering the ground below. It closed the way Mole had taken today. Another route she did not know. "Oh no, what to do? I can't see the hole, can you?" said Mole, who was feeling scared. Flower had to be brave, with a new friend to save. "Sit at my roots," he declared. For Flower knew how dangerous it was too, for a little mole to be out in the cold. Little moles were meant underground, with soil all around, and their mothers for them to hold. Oh, look, she's wishing she's back home with her mum. Oh, dear. Although Flower was sore, he bent his stalk to the floor to cover his shivering friend. His petals kept Mole warm away from the cold storm, and for days Flower did not unbend. 3 days and 3 nights, and thankfully a light came up above as asked. It was the bright sun whose rays it spun, melting the snow at last. Just then a loud sound came from deep underground, a rumbling just like before. Out popped a snout, sniffing about, and then appeared 4 more. It was 5 different moles from 5 different holes who had reached the garden at last. It was Mum and Dad, and how they were glad. "Where have you been?" they asked. She's got her 3 brothers here too, look. "Mum, I'm all right. I just had a little fright, but look what I finally found. It's the most beautiful flower. Everywhere I did scour, and it was here all the time on this mound." And she's showing them, look, here's the flower. How her brothers they laughed, calling her daft. "That's not the flower," they said, "for that flower's old and is rotting with mould." And a tear little Mole shed. Oh dear. Flower then sighed, silent and resigned, knowing that they were right. "I'm no longer beautiful, radiant or youthful, but knew you didn't have your sight." Young Mole climbed up and held Flower's face like a cup, being careful not to fall. "You saved me from the cold, which was brave and bold. You're the most beautiful flower of all." The end. Well, boys and girls, I hope you enjoyed my story. Thank you for letting me share that with you. And now I wonder if you can pop your story down on a piece of paper. I bet you've got lots of stories about your friends in your head. So maybe you could gather a piece of paper and a pencil, and I want you to draw your friend on the page, and perhaps you can tell us what makes them a super duper friend. Maybe they have super listening ears, or maybe they make you laugh out loud, or maybe they're kind to you when you're sad. So that's what I would like you to do. And for your grown-ups at home, if you want to follow more about what I do as a children's author, you can go onto my website, which is www.thisishelenmarshall.com, or I'm on Instagram at Helen Marshall Books. And I also do some creative writing classes. So if you have some budding authors at home, do get in touch, and I can offer some Zoom calls for one-to-one creative writing sessions. It's been so lovely to be part of the Shed School. Thank you very much, boys and girls. Have a great time today. Bye.